Yeah.
So, everyone, welcome back to episode 4 of Generational Curse Words. You're here with Olivia and Mustafaa, and we are really excited to have you all. I'm starting to feel like I could have had a career in radio. I don't know.
I
I
think we'd be
don't know.
surprised how many people probably could, as the medium is now available to so many people. But yeah, welcome. I'm feeling like we're kind of getting into the flow of this, and it's getting to feel a little bit easier and flow a little bit better. It's good to be here. So how are you? What's going
I
on?
know. How am I? I'm doing good. You had a good
Mhm.
week. Did you do anything
I
exciting?
I really did not.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I'd have to think about what did I actually do this week. And I think it's good sometimes when you can say you didn't do anything, besides, again, pay attention. You know me, I'm always, looking at what's going on in the world in terms of the headlines, seeing where things are going to go and where things are
Mhm.
going. But no, nothing special, but it was an easy flow weekend. Nothing terrible. Um, and nothing extremely wonderful, except glad to be alive and glad to keep
Right.
kicking.
I knew you had to say it. Black people always got to say that.
Yeah,
Happy the
we
good
have to.
Lord woke me up this
Yeah, yep,
morning.
yep, yep. What do they say? Any good day above ground is a good day. You know,
Right?
and I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that, but again, there's
hmm
something. There's always something good. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to think what's happening with me. I don't have COVID anymore, so
Oh, okay. So that was
that's
quick then,
good.
was it? Wasn't it quick?
I think so. I think
Mhm.
so. Like I'm still cuz we're moving offices at my job. And
Uh-huh.
Mustafa, I don't do that. Like I
Right.
don't lift. Like why? Like I just don't understand why it's my this is gonna have to I just don't understand why it's my responsibility to move myself. Like there's operations, like there's a whole team that's in charge of making this easy. Like I will
Mhm.
gladly put my stuff in a box, wrap it, organize it, label it. I will do
Right.
everything, but the idea of doing manual labor that is not job related, it's
Uh-huh.
just crazy. Because even when we used to do our youth development trainings, I would lug the coffee maker, groceries, all that, but it was
Right.
for the purpose of my job. It
Right.
wasn't
Right.
replacing operations.
Yeah, yeah. There should be somebody to do that, right?
Yeah, but
You would
I
think.
don't like sometimes I have to like check myself, not check myself, but just have
Mm.
a check in like is this really an issue or are you just a recovering daddy's girl? Like, like is this really a problem or is this something that you would convince your dad or a man or someone, convince them that this is a problem so that they can solve it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Does this? I mean,
Yeah.
this probably doesn't make sense to you. Well, no, it
No, it
does because
does.
you have
It does. I
daughters.
have daughters.
I
I
was
have
gonna,
daughters.
yeah.
I mean, I immediately just thought of my eldest daughter when she was younger, as a child, no matter what went wrong, what it was like, give it to daddy. Daddy can fix it. He can fix it.
hmm
Give it to daddy. That was her whole thing. He'll fix it. He can fix it. I mean, if something was broken, if something didn't work, if something needed to be put together, I mean, it was just automatically, daddy will fix it. That was like her thing. He'll
hmm
fix it. Um, so that's a good question, and now of course, she fixes things. She has her own tools, she has her own house, so
hmm
she does stuff, but she kind of enjoys even when I come to visit, if there's something, I'll look around the house and see, well, this needs to be done and I'll do that, or this needs to be done and I'll do
hmm
that, so yeah, I think some of it is I think some of it is who we are. And as we, as we, ask Olivia and ask Mustafa, and that's kind of what I was thinking about in terms of a question, that I would ask you. It directly relates to that in terms of a woman's role, in terms of roles,
Mhm.
and where we are today. Um, like one of the things I was looking at, and one thing that's like, clear in my mind right now, in terms of the world, is women who are advancing, women who are, you know, coming to their own as women in the world of work, in different
Mhm.
opportunities in the world, all at the same time, while women are facing, uh, you know, personal rights as women and reproductive rights, etc. And one of the things I was wondering, is where you fall in that whole conversation. And I know it's really, really broad, because one of the things I was thinking
Mhm.
about is that, I trying to think who it was that she was. I can't remember who it was. But it was a woman. They were interviewing her, and they were asking her a question. She had achieved. She's the first woman in her field, and they were asking her, what does it feel like to be a woman in the field, or what is it like? And then she just said, "Stop." She says,
Mhm.
"Why are all of my questions about being a woman in this work?" And you would never ask a man that. You would ask him questions relative to
Mhm.
the work itself. And I never thought about that. Because that's what happens, when we get the first, black person, female judge, the first black, female, vice president or woman of color, and all of the questions and even all of their responses are about, um, well, I feel I'm a role model. I feel, and it's all relative again to their gender, or to them as a woman, and never any questions that refer to the competency of the field, or their ability, or their
Mhm.
advice, or their knowledge of the field itself. Um, you know, um, and so, I just wonder, and so my question to you, Olivia, in light of that,
Mhm.
is, how do you see that in terms of where women are today, and what's happening in terms of the response of folks to women and first time? Does it even feel like a first time? Like, I
Mhm.
can't even, you can't ask a young person today, what does it feel like to have a first black president? Because it's happened. So they don't
Yeah.
know what it's like not for that not to happen. So,
Mhm.
is that your experience? I mean, are you going through where you recognize that women are coming into their own, or women are, where?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like women in every generation, women set a different collective goal for themselves. So,
Mm,
my view of things often involve historical political cycles. And so there
mm,
was a generation where women just wanted to vote, and that was the
mm,
collective goal. That was women goals.
mm.
Women wanted to be paid the same as men. That was women goals. Still not accomplished.
Right.
Um, so I often think of our goal as women now, and I think, at least from what I'm viewing, specifically in my community, I'm a Black woman, right? So I can't
Mm,
speak to all worldviews. I don't even think it's my job to be so plugged in, um, that I can speak to the global woman identity.
mm,
I think people can define themselves, but I feel like it's our goal to be unapologetically attached to our self interests,
mm,
um, regardless. Whether that's in career, education, motherhood, friendships, romantic relationships, finances, whatever. I think there's a huge, huge push for us to choose ourselves first, um, to not be sacrifices.
Mhm.
for the greater cause. Because even when I look at women in my family that came before me, they kept everything afloat. And
Mhm.
they did a beautiful job. You know, I owe a lot of my childhood memories, some of my happiest moments, to things that they were able to make happen. And even when I look at myself, there are times where I will, like, for instance, our oldest son, where I was bending over backwards for his
Mhm.
second birthday party, right? But there are women that do that 24/7 for the sake of their family, and they do a great job and they're successful. But I think we're finding that as a result, the women progress and everyone else
Mhm.
just kind of sits back, defaults, and they don't evolve. And then it turns into this generation now where it's the women that are in therapy, moving forward, going to school, doing this, doing that, and the complaint is, "I can't find anyone on my level."
That's
Like,
interesting.
I can't find, especially, like, for the straight one, I can't find anyone on my level. All these guys, they just want a mom, you know, they don't push themselves, they're not motivated, they're not confident.
That's
Um,
interesting. That's
yeah,
interesting.
and I think there is some truth to that narrative, but I also think that the new collective goal of unapologetically choosing ourselves,
Mhm.
um, I think only it only empowers still a small-ish part of our power. Because I
Mhm.
believe personally as a woman, our superpower is being able to control any dynamic, being able to
Mhm.
command anything out of anyone, even a man that's not, quote, unquote, "on your level,"
Uh-huh.
if that
Uh-huh.
makes any sense, and either they get with the
Yeah.
program or they don't.
Right, right, right.
And it's
Yeah.
as simple as that, but not having to try to make things work and not creating a certain dynamic where you're the superhero and he
Mhm.
just benefits,
Mhm. Mhm. Do
if
you have
that
any
makes.
yeah, it does. Do you have any concern around what we're now considering like women's rights, like like
Mhm,
things are going like as you mentioned, equal pay, still has yet to happen, and it seems like some things um, pretty much go in cycles,
mhm,
and it appears like it's going to get addressed, but it uh, never does, and even if it does, it gets kind of turned back and reversed. Like this whole thing with women's rights over their bodies. I mean, we still live in a world where men ultimately, even though there are a lot of women on board with it, where men can ultimately decide,
mhm.
what happens with a woman, especially with respect to reproductive rights.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so do you feel like that's still? I mean, where are you with that? Do you feel like it's still a struggle, or
I
and
wouldn't. Mhm. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, and even in perspective of us as a people, meaning
Mhm,
the African worldview on reproductive rights, and because we don't, even when we hear about the conversation, we don't hear about African women in that conversation. At least
mhm,
I haven't. There's this whole generic thing. Uh, the right to vote, for women was like women's rights. But yet
mhm,
there's a distinct thing that happens with African women when it comes to voting. So when we talk about
mhm,
reproductive rights, we think, we just hear women. And we know we're talking about white women, but we don't hear anything particular to the um, the aspect of that as it pertains to African women and all they've gone through
mhm,
throughout the history throughout our history in terms of what happens with women with regard to reproductive rights and reproduction. So, when you hear that, what
mhm.
what do you think about? How does it? Where do you fall in with that?
Well, I and it's a very emotional topic, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Whether you are for or against or fall somewhere in between. I'm not using any
mhm.
political jargon in this
Yeah, yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
Um, so I just always I mean, when it comes to Black people,
Hmm.
African people, and the social structures, I lend myself to the framework that I use to that I was taught to use when examining and studying the Black community. And so that's my professor, Dr. Greg Carr. Shout out to him. He has the
Hmm.
six conceptual categories, and you can Google this. His six conceptual categories, Dr. Greg Carr. Those will come up.
Hmm.
But the two ones that always are my go-to when I'm trying to tackle something that's bogging my mind down,
Hmm.
is the social structure versus the governance structure. So the social structure is how others see us. So that's laws, policies, higher up decisions, stereotypes, connotations, assumptions, all of that, right?
Hmm.
And there are some inner workings that happen there. So that's where reproductive rights live, right? But then you have
Okay.
the governance structure, which is how we see each other, how we
Hmm.
see ourselves, and how we govern ourselves. So, all that to say, the social structure has been working against specifically Black Americans since the inception of America. And we
Hmm.
have found ways around it since the very beginning.
Hmm.
Absolutely nothing has changed. So, overturning Roe v. Wade, isn't going to keep even a woman like me from having the connections in the Black community to
Right,
terminate a
right,
pregnancy should I need to. Like,
right, right,
we are a
right.
very resourceful people. And
Hmm.
so those things are sad and it's easy to get sucked in and into that. But at the end of the day, we know that we got to make something shake. We're going to make something shake, regardless of
Hmm.
what they're doing, what's going on over there. Like,
Hmm.
the vast majority of our community operations happen unseen, you
Right,
know,
right,
until
right.
someone feels like seeing it to set an example,
Uh-huh.
So
Hmm.
um, that's that on that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's interesting. It makes me think that's why um that's why we don't push to really be in the conversation, because we, having been kept out of the conversation, I think, and this goes to our our youth development perspective, and we say that when young people are not included in matters of importance, they
Mhm.
create their own importance. And we as a people have always done that. We've created the systems, we've created what we needed to do to exist and to move forward and to strive and to thrive, regardless as to what's happening
Mhm.
on the outside. And it's only an illusion, or the perspective of the prominent world, that that we're in that conversation, because
Mhm.
even if we're not in that conversation, we have our own conversation
Yeah.
that we've always had, and that we've had to have. And it's interesting because people do, and I just, and when I say people do, I'm thinking about how oftentimes, white folks, or white women in particular, will try to bring black women into the conversation when they need someone to boost
Mhm.
whatever issue they'll try to bring us in, or join us,
And
or
someone will come
sister
running
sister.
too.
Yeah,
Someone will
yeah,
come
yeah,
running to sit on your
yeah,
stage, and they'll
yeah,
have good intentions. They really would.
yeah, yeah.
I think a everyone has good intentions somewhere in the
Right,
things that
right.
they do, but I just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I feel. And even on the flip side, right? If I don't have a
Mhm.
job, if I don't have any money and I have 10 kids,
Mhm.
we can make something shake with that
Right.
too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you,
yeah.
and I think
Absolutely.
that's, yeah, and I think that's the beauty in our culture, is that even in this push to for DEI and staying
Hmm.
woke and all, there's
Hmm.
just so many things that the average white person will never know about us,
Right,
and that's
right,
never gonna change. Like,
right,
that's
right,
never gonna
right.
change. And I
Yeah.
think that that's our superpower. And I think that's why the scales are tipping, because the things that they know and the ways that they know to attack us exist
Hmm.
in the social structure, but the governance
Right.
structure we got on lock.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
y'all can ban whatever, y'all can do whatever, y'all can arrest whatever, y'all can arrest
Hmm.
whoever. I guarantee you that same person you picked up gonna be at the cookout next Saturday. You know, we gonna make it shake. I
Right.
cannot tell you
Right.
how many times I've heard that someone got arrested and then I see them in a couple of weeks. Like, what? And if they be arrested on some crazy stuff too, like you ain't never gonna
Right.
see them again, right?
Right.
So, um, just, um, just, just understanding that as people, because it's easy to become a part of the social structure because we're part of it. We can't help
Yeah.
it. We're part of it. We're
Yeah.
on this ship, and so and a part of our identity is rooted in it to an extent,
Hmm.
especially
Hmm.
to be an
Hmm.
African American.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just don't get so bogged down in that and go back to your African nature and
Yeah.
whatever you deem fit, you
Yeah.
can find in your community because someone else has addressed that need. You know,
Yeah.
you may have
Yeah.
talked to 7 people, you might need to talk to 10,
Yeah.
but you'll
Yeah.
find what you need because we've got us at the end of the day.
And here's the interesting thing, and how I'm hearing that and what it means is, oftentimes, I mean, maybe that also explains or addresses this phenomenon, I'll call it that, of uh, black folk not voting or black
Mhm.
folk not caring. This illusion that that black folks don't care about what happens, and that's why we don't participate. But here's the thing. Um, what you just explained in terms of the different structures, social governance, etc., that also, in my mind, kind of answers a question or addresses the concept or the idea that black folks don't participate in society, or that almost to the extent that it makes people think that we don't care. But is
Mhm.
that I think over the centuries, we've come to understand the reality of who we are, the systems that we're in, and our abilities to impact, change, or affect that system, to the extent that we have actually created our own systems. And the reason I'm saying that is because it really does, as I'm thinking, and I've tell people, I say, it doesn't matter to me who the next president is.
Mhm.
And people say, well, why don't you, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. There's nothing that's going to happen that's going to change our situation from the perspective of whoever gets into office. It hasn't happened, and it never will happen.
Mhm.
So we have learned that we need to do what we need to do no matter what. So all of these societal issues, I guess, in a sense, and we started off talking about women in particular. Whatever's going on in society as far as women are concerned, we still have
Mhm.
our own um, business that we have to take care of.
Yeah.
We have our own power. We have our own matters of importance, and our own ways of dealing with it. And it should be that way. We should not need permission um, to do what we need to do. So
Mhm.
it touches on so much. And like I say, with youth development, when people are looking at young people, trying to figure out what's going with young people, and why we can't bring young people into
Mhm.
to the point where they're concerned, that they have the same concerns that we have about the world, and that is because they have their own governance structure. They have their own sense of who they are and what they need to do in order to survive and thrive as young
Yeah.
people. And we may not
They've
like
created
it. We
their
may
own
not like how it.
systems.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We may not like how it looks, and we may question it because we have concerns about safety and other things. But they do what
Mhm.
they have to do. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that
yeah,
goes to, I mean, that goes to even when I look at Washington DC, right?
yeah.
The transplants may look at our communities and they may not like what they see, and they
Mhm.
may rid of it and reassign us, and then only after the fact do they realize how organized and intentional and
Mhm.
impactful those systems were. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
this may be the hood to you, but that neighbor right there, they make sure don't nobody come on this block and do nothing crazy. The
Yep.
grandma up
Yep.
the street, she watches everyone's kids for a low price because you know the daycare is crazy in the city.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it and I saw this in my neighborhood. When it snows, you may never see some neighbors, but when it snows and one black man goes out there and shovels, all the black
All black
men
men.
go
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
there and
And
shovel. So
shovel.
we
Yep.
are a
Yep.
very organized, intentional, intelligent system as a
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And we may not even notice it until it's
Right.
gone. And when
Yeah.
those systems are dismantled, only then are we like, damn, like
Yeah.
we're losing a jewel here,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like what am
Yeah.
I gonna do for real?
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Yeah. 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 And I think again, it's something that we don't necessarily realize because um, we're born into it. It's like we're
Mhm.
born. We come into the world and we come into these systems. We come into this culture. We come into this. So the intentionality of it may no longer be there,
Mhm.
we don't know why. We just know this is what we do. We
Mhm.
just know this is what we do. This is how we do it. This is what we do. Um,
Yeah. And
and
I was
so,
I even had a conversation with one of my friends. She purchased a beautiful place over in Petworth. She came over to my house over the weekend. Me and my friends, every once in a while, we get together to watch stupid movies on purpose. It's just
mhm.
something mindless that we can do to just escape whatever.
Mhm.
And it was a Tubi movie. I feel so crazy saying it was a Tubi original movie
Do people actually watch Tubi?
for fun. I think, I don't know. This isn't to insult anyone that watches Tubi and takes them seriously, but like, Mustafa, when I tell you that, and this is an aside, but it's just like there was no plot, no
Mhm.
story, no ending, no
Mhm.
explanation for why things were happening. And this was a movie about dolls kill like sex dolls killing customers that had purchased them, and we watched the whole movie, and they gave a whole speech as to why this was happening. Still can't tell you why them dolls were killing people. It didn't even end proper. Like, stupid. If you have a lot
Uh,
on your mind and you
uh-huh.
just need something to shake your brain, literally,
Mhm.
watch a Tubi movie. Preferably one that's not about like crime and drugs and
Right,
prostitution and that. But even then,
right.
the production is so interesting that even those movies aren't traumatic. Like
Mhm.
there's a
Mhm.
difference between watching a movie about prostitution directed by Lee Daniels
Right.
versus directed by Daniel Lee of Tubi. Like if you want to watch a crime
Yeah.
film and not have your emotions touched, watch it it's the dumbest stuff. So like filmed on iPhones, I swear. But
Right,
anyway,
right.
so she was talking, and her thoughts were very valid, but she basically said that, I bought this apartment in Petworth, was really excited to be, to find one of the last pockets in, what is it, up northwest that is
Uh-huh.
still black, right?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
still has enough black people. And she was just a little disappointed in the parts of the city, um I don't know, and the things that reminded her of the negative side of poverty. So
Right.
people just hanging out, drugs, all this and that, and she just, the typical thoughts come to mind because no matter what, no black person can say that they had it easy acquiring
Right.
whatever they have, whether it's
Right.
a mansion or a studio apartment, right? I have
Right.
my little apartment in the half hood. You would have thought I was, the woman version of Diddy the way I was feeling, right? And so she just couldn't understand like why that was the choice, like
Yeah.
why that was the choice to just come and hang at the corner store. And she was really like for a little while she was really just sad,
Mm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a really good conversation, but basically, you know um I just view things differently. So I told her like, there's certain, back to the governance structure, there are
Mm-hmm.
certain shrines within a black community. And if you look up the word shrine, it's a place of worship, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
place where you also practice culture. It's either
Mm-hmm.
or. And so when we think of shrines, we can think of the black church and things of that nature. But when I think of shrines, I think of corner stores, barbershops, the rec,
Mm-hmm.
the bus stop, the metro station. And
Mm-hmm.
I told her, like, I get it. Like, I get it. People are gathering in front of the corner store and aren't earning an income, aren't positioning themselves to survive the big scary monster that's gentrification. And at the end of the day,
Right.
you're disappointed because you're scared for their fate. But I just told her, like, just I just try to always see the beauty in black culture and the ability
Mm-hmm.
to build community in front
Mm-hmm.
of a corner store is a very African thing. And
It
so
is.
on the flip side, we can, complain that the city's changing, it's gentrifying, no one's from DC, no one appreciates DC. Well, we got people that stand in front of cornerstones to represent,
Yeah.
for what
Yeah.
DC always has been.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just seeing that as self-determination, because for all we know, half of the people that chill in front of the corner store, bus stop, up and down H Street or AutoZone, whatever, whatever, they
Mm-hmm.
could very well sleep in Waldorf, sleep in Hyattsville, sleep in Upper Marlboro, and come back here every day because this
Yeah.
is theirs, and that is self determination. And so, yes, while they may not be fully positioning themselves to win against the monster that is gentrification, well, first of all, we have the governance structure to fall
Right.
back on.
Right. Right.
um, but also just allowing our people to be, and understanding that they may be the person that's hanging in front of the corner store today, but in
Mm-hmm.
6 months, I don't know, maybe they'll get a job at the rec with DC
Yeah.
government, DC park,
Yeah.
so just understanding that you're only seeing a small glimpse of this person's identity, and that everyone has a
Mm-hmm.
long life to live, and to be
Mm-hmm.
sad is to assume. um,
The professor again, you said the governance structure, the social.
Dr. Greg Carr, the six
Dr.
conceptual categories.
Oh, our word for today. I'm looking at because that took us into a lot
Mm.
in terms of culture. I think it in our connection to youth development, as I say, where you kind of create your own importance, and what really is important. Um, and I think importance was one of our words at one time, at one point. What we
Mhm.
deserve, what we decide um, is important. Um, and so, with respect to youth development and that perspective of importance, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at what we consider important and what we tell our young people is important. What we say is foolishness. What we say is real. What we say they should be focused on. What they should be paying attention to. And even in our relationships, what do we consider important? What do we consider important versus um, what's not important? What should we be concerned about? Um, and where do we agree or disagree with that in terms of our relationships and interactions with ourselves? So older people think young people should be thinking about education, and a job.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we think is important. Money, job, relationships,
Mhm. I
and
mean, I
even that
know
has changed.
there's a checklist, right? Um,
Mhm.
and ignorantly, the checklist is there's one for women and there's one for men with no consideration of um gender identity,
Mhm.
sexuality,
Mhm.
personal goals, things of that nature. Like I know, um, at least for me coming from the South, um, don't get pregnant as a teenager. When you do get pregnant, make sure you're married first. Look for a man that you can rely on that'll take care of you, but work hard, just in case he leaves you for someone younger. Be happy, love yourself, but not too much because bragging is off putting. Like we can't as adults, we can't make up our mind about because we don't know what's important to us. We don't know
Mhm.
what we don't know what deserves our prioritization. And here we are trying to tell kids, and we just end up confusing the hell out of young people to the point that they don't even
Yeah.
listen to us anymore, as they
Yeah.
shouldn't, as they
Yeah.
shouldn't, as we didn't. The amount of things that I did,
Mhm.
that my parents told me not to do. And mind you, it wasn't even on some like sneaking out or, dating a 36-year-old or anything like that, but just like simple things like I only applied to one university. I didn't tell them.
Right.
I
Right.
told them I applied everywhere. I only applied to one university. And that, even looking back, that was a stupid move because that was the year I applied the year that Drake made the Make Me Proud song, and Drake was up and coming. Everyone was listening to that, and he shouted out women from Howard. So
Oh
then
wow.
after that song, all the guys wanted to go to Howard to get one of
Mhm.
these girls that be eating salad and on the treadmill, even though no one was at the gym when I
Mhm.
was there, and all of the women wanted to go to Howard because they just thought that this place was going to make them desirable.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Right.
that year, I believe the acceptance rate was 15%. So that
Wow.
was wild. That was
Wow.
wild that I only applied to one
Wow.
university. This is just making me
Wow.
think, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is that, like you said, you know, we hear what's important, we agree, or we have this agreement in terms of what is important, and we pass it on to young people. But what we never do pass on to them is that we don't necessarily ourselves, as adults, do what's important or give importance to what we say should be important. And then uh, when we have to switch, we don't make allowances for the fact that young people, I mean, like we always tell young people what they should do.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't do it and they quote unquote fail at not doing it, we never tell them, well, guess what? I failed at it too.
Mm-hmm.
We never share, it doesn't work for everybody. This formula for success in life, there is no formula. We never tell them that there is. And I actually recall in one of my youth development trainings where the question came up, do you ever apologize to young people? And it was great debate about it because there were a lot of people say, no, you never admit you're wrong to young people. Say,
Mm-hmm.
what? You never admit, they always have to see, because then they'll lose faith in you. They won't believe anything you say, as opposed to, well, they will understand. They'll see the human side, they'll see that you're real. And it's not that they don't know anyway. Um, but yeah, it's almost like we set the whole idea of what's important sets people up to fail, because when it doesn't work out that way, um, then we have this whole complex that we go through,
Mm-hmm.
a sense of failure because we didn't follow instructions. And the thing is, whether you follow instructions or not, there's stuff that's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
because stuff happens. And And what we don't prepare young people, in my mind, is we don't prepare them for what happens when things don't work out, number one. And even more important, we don't prepare them to pursue what is their heart's desire.
Mhm.
And in not doing that, it's almost like you can guarantee. Here's one way I think you can guarantee failure for a young person, and that is to give them a roadmap that has nothing to do with what they want to do. It has nothing to do with where they want to go. It has nothing to do with what they want to be. Just set this up, set this roadmap up. So you can guarantee failure.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas you can, do the opposite, which is set everything up for what it is they want, what they want to do, and you can support that, and you
Mhm.
can guarantee success. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is reminding me of a book that I just started reading today.
mhm.
And it is entitled The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Like,
Right.
that's literally what the book is called. Um, and he was explaining what he refers to as the feedback loop from hell. And
uh,
this is what happens when something other than the individual themselves, whether it be a parent, you know,
mhm,
a friend, a spouse, a society, a culture,
mhm, mhm,
um, set the goals for you,
uh,
especially on a larger scale. And this is more in youth development. The
mhm,
world has set goals for young people, but when that happens, you literally create an entire group of people who do not like themselves because you set a
right.
certain bar. So, for instance, let's say I have anxiety, it just is
Mhm,
it is what it is. At least that's the
mhm,
way that I should be viewing it. I deal with
mhm,
anxiety. This is something that I deal with. And the goal should not be to eradicate it or get rid of it, because then
right.
you create this is what's going to happen. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling anxious. Okay, let me calm down. Let me relax. And
Mhm,
then you get upset at yourself for not being able to relax. And
right.
then you get upset at yourself for getting upset
Which
at
makes you more
yourself for not
anxious, right?
accepting yourself. And then you
Right.
exactly, which makes you more and more anxious. And you can fill in the blank with anything. So we could talk about anxious, financially responsible,
Right.
um,
Right.
more open-minded, or no one's
Right.
going to stay in an environment that breeds shame
Right.
continuously. Shame is
That's
a
true.
is a
Yeah.
silent killer. Really, it
Yeah.
really
It is.
is.
Yeah.
So,
It is. Yeah.
um, this is just this has me getting just thinking about young people, because if the goal is to go to college and you choose not to go to college, and
Right.
let's say you choose a trade. Well, now every single time something doesn't go your way on that path of choosing a trade, you're mad at yourself for not going to college. But what they don't tell you is that college is a shit show too. And
Right.
there are people
Right.
in college that are like, damn, why I do this shit, man. I got all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
loans. Like, and so
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like, just not caring about the consequences of your decisions, because everything turns out how it's going to turn out.
Turn
Like,
out
there's
anyway. Yeah.
no
Yeah.
other way to explain it. And if we explain that to young people, I think we would have a generation that for the first time they're walking back that natural disposition of disliking themselves.
Yeah. 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 And again, as you and I have said many, many times, that is the true source of what's going on with young people.
Hmm.
Self-worth, not having a sense of self-worth, and really because we haven't facilitated for them. We haven't facilitated uh, their value, the sense of who
Hmm.
they are, and young people out here, not just young people, but people in general, but young people. So that's who we talk about, and that's who we deal with
Yeah.
when they're in a state where they don't feel a sense of self-value and self-worth. Then all bets are off, because if they don't value themselves, how can they value anyone else or
Hmm.
anything else? So it's really not. It's really not rocket science. Yeah. Yeah. So when we look at it, it's, what do we do? How do we face it? How do
Mhm.
we and that's huge for us. And it's interesting, the subtle art. It is a subtle art,
Very
because you have
subtle.
to you have to you have to you have to have the conversation with yourself. You have to weigh what's important. You have to
Mhm.
weigh what it is that you really want and the value of that. And then you have to weigh how you're going to navigate, um, or conversate. That's one of our
Mhm.
words. How you're going to conversate with those around you who are constantly trying to remind you and tell you what you should be doing,
Mhm.
and telling you that you should care, and try to shame you for not caring.
Mhm.
um, but for those of us who really, really care about young people, care about the young people in our lives, and care about ourselves, to admit that that's what we're doing,
Mhm.
that that's what's actually going on, and to admit that even in our own lives, we've put too much importance onto what others have said are important,
Mhm.
to the point that we're missing it and we're missing the plan. And being able to say, okay, be just to ourselves. And I'm looking at the way back now. How do we apologize for it? How do we forgive ourselves?
I
For
I think the best way to apologize is to admit that you don't got the answers, like
yeah,
like
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's the biggest way, and just to be unapologetic in your flaws, right? There's
yeah,
there's if you wanted to be an actor and you didn't become an actor, there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you if you wanted to cut out alcohol and you went out with your friends and had 3 drinks, like just don't beat yourself up for that. Like
yeah,
everyone has within them the good, the bad, and the ugly. And all of it just is. Like all of
yeah.
it just is, because to beat yourself up means that you're trying to reach a bar that was not set for you, when you're
Right.
reaching your personalized bar every day. You're exactly where, who, and how you need to be. And I think as adults, if we embody that, um, not only will we be taken more seriously
You're right. Right.
by young
Right.
people, but it sets the stage for just radical self-acceptance. And that doesn't mean that, let me not say that. Let me not even say that, because what I was going to say is that doesn't mean that we just, settle for whatever. Well, if you have radical self-acceptance, you won't do that anyway. To think that one thing
Exactly.
leads to another is just a false premise.
Right. Right.
A false premise, because the people that actually quote unquote mess up the most like themselves the least.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think in addition to that, the apology is releasing yourself from that self-accusing spirit, which didn't really originate with you anyway.
Mhm.
It's what someone else told you. And I'm thinking about a conversation I had earlier, this week, with a parent about, you know, looking back in the past in terms of, I did my best, with them, and maybe, my child didn't think I did the best, but I just explained to them that I did the best I knew how, based on, what I did at the time, and that now they should just kind of understand that, and they should kind of move on. And I was saying, well, part of the moving on, is the apology, and
Mhm.
it's the unconditional acceptance that what it is that you did, and without an excuse, like, if I'm apologizing to my kid, okay, yeah, I could have done that differently.
Mhm.
And instead of saying, but I did the best I could, really what the child needs to hear at that point is, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just period. I'm sorry. so that they can then say, okay, and then forgive themselves and say, okay,
Mhm.
it's not supposed to be this way. There is nothing wrong with me. I don't have to just accept this and move on. So part of that, forgiving yourself, but
Mhm.
also understanding what it means to apologize, and then fix it. And the fix it to me is, as we move on into the future, um, not to continue to harbor on it. Don't revisit it.
Yeah.
Don't switch out. Okay, well, okay. So you didn't make it in school. Maybe you should go into the military. No, 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 no. If we fix it, if we leave it, if we are sorry, if we apologize for, it, if we realize that we shouldn't have done that, that we should have allowed them to be who they are, then the way we fix it is actually to kind of have faith. Have
Yeah.
faith that what they want to do is what they want to do. And it doesn't have to look like anything that we consider as success. Or, even if their determination is that they want to decide that for the rest of their life, they're going to struggle at something. And that's what's going to give them fulfillment. That
Mhm.
effort is going to give them fulfillment. Let them do that, and commit that it's okay and that we still love them, no matter what. Um, and like I say, to forgive and forget it, to never revisit that kind of thinking again. And I think part of, I'll revisit this many, many times and I'll repeat this many, many times.
Mhm.
Part of what we need to do with young people is have faith that they have everything they need, that they are enough to do and to become who they're meant to become, and that we don't have to add any ingredients to it. We don't have to figure it out for them. We have to have faith that that they
Yeah.
are in fact going to that they're going to figure it out, and and it's not even for us to really be concerned about that. That's not our job to be worried about that in that sense. Our responsibility is to give them the means, the ways and the means to make things kind of happen. So
Mhm.
um yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's that. So
Yeah. And the way back is, we're talking about young people and the adults of society, but the way back can be um instituted anywhere. Is that a word?
mhm,
Implemented. Instituted.
mhm,
Yeah. I was
mhm,
gonna say,
yeah, yeah,
I'm saying
yeah,
things.
yeah.
You can use that anywhere. Even when I was thinking about it, because I was talking about apologizing. Because one thing
Mhm.
about Olivia, oh, it's so hard for me to apologize. I'll do it, I will
Uh-huh.
do it. I will do
Mhm.
it. I really will. But
Mm.
god damn, is that
Uh-huh.
painful. And I
Yeah.
was talking to my friend and he was like, I get it, right? If you offend
Mhm.
someone, you apologize. But he was just basically saying, like, I feel like an apology is a two-way street. Like, you have to, if someone's having a hard time apologizing to you and you need the apology, there should be an effort to make this a safe space to apologize. I don't want to
Uh-huh.
because people who don't want to apologize because there is a fear. There is not
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
may manifest as stubbornness, as thinking I'm always right, as gaslighting, as no accountability, but all of that
Yeah.
has a root fear to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A fear that you'll lose, basically, a
Yeah.
fear that, the beliefs that made you that you held on to enough to make this a situation that you have to apologize for, that you have to drop those beliefs. And that's not
Yeah.
necessarily the case. An apology does require a two-way street. If you are waiting
Yeah.
for your get back and an apology, you don't deserve it. You're not
Yeah.
ready to be
Yeah. Yeah.
apologized
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. And I'm looking at a universal perspective right now, and I'm thinking about things that I've done and things that people have forgiven me for. And And I'm thinking about, a specific time when a person says, um, even though everything that you've done, everything that you've done to me, I just want you to know I forgive you. You can actually get forgiveness sometimes from someone when you haven't apologized, when you aren't ready for the
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness. And what I mean, I want to say I'm not ready, I'm saying, I mean, you don't feel remorseful. You don't feel like you, or even if you feel remorseful, you were unprepared. Like sometimes we can be unprepared for people to forgive us. And so that at that moment, it doesn't have the impact that it could or should have. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about the whole point of apology and forgiveness in my mind is healing. And sometimes when there's an injury,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you don't even realize, it's like not realizing you've been shot. Okay, so if a person is coming up to give you healing, you don't even realize that you've been, you really don't even get the
Mm-hmm.
point of it. So it's a two-way thing. And then there's the thing of not being not being ready to apologize. And like you said, fear. And right now I'm thinking on a whole global scale of why we've never
Mm-hmm.
gotten an
An
apology for
apology.
slavery.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is it
We get
because
gaslit instead, like we
yeah,
weren't
yeah,
the,
instead, right, exactly. Yeah, no. Well, we weren't there. We weren't the ones who did it to you. Why should I apologize,
Mm-hmm.
So I think on a very, very large scale, I think there's pieces of it. I think, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say what I think the overall perspective or the overall solution for it is. It's like Palestine and Israel. Okay, all right, you did this, and we did this, and you did this, and we did this, and it comes to a
Mm-hmm.
point where so much has happened that people feel insulted, injured, on both sides, even though we can trace it back to one thing. Okay, you had no business coming in and invading and taking our land. We can always
Mm-hmm.
trace everything back to one thing, but thereafter is so much that happens that people can feel slighted, injury, and people can justifiably feel an injury even if they were the one who started it. I mean, they were the wicked one. All I did was punch you. You didn't have to knock my eye out. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we then give degrees to things of which we feel should have, shouldn't have happened. I think ultimately, um, karma. I think
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, karma has to step in, and
Yeah.
I really do understand that the scripture, I really don't like to refer to scripture because I don't ever want to give the impression that, I favor or any particular way of thinking. But I do understand this where it says, vengeance is mine. I'm going to say, saith the universe, saith karma, because only
Mm-hmm.
karma can actually appropriately in my mind step in and make the balance.
Mm-hmm.
There's individual things that we may want from another person in terms of an apology or an understanding, but we don't. When we don't get it, I read someplace again. The important thing is this or the best thing is to accept the apology that you never got, and that is that sometimes um, it really is up to
Mm-hmm.
karma to
Yeah.
set everything right. And I think when you want a person to apologize, you need a person to apologize. You really, I think there's more than what we should ask for in terms of what we really, really
Mm-hmm.
want. What we really want is for karma, the universe, to give us this
Yeah.
peace that only it can give us. And that comes from, again, it comes from faith.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to me, everything, like I say, the currency for the universe is faith. You have to believe and have faith. And when you have that faith, then the universe will always respond to you. Um, so that's what I think.
And
Yep.
I just, because I was talking to my partner earlier, and we were talking about a situation where he felt slighted, and I just
Hmm.
reminded him, like, you may feel how you feel now, and
Hmm.
eventually it's going to evolve into a win, because that's what
Hmm.
happens in life.
Right.
But they have a spiritual debt to pay, and
Exactly.
neither you nor them get to determine the price. And that's just, I think that's what it is. And I think we know that, even if we don't articulate it
Hmm.
as a people,
Hmm.
especially, and I'm talking about the global Black community. I think
Yeah.
that's why. So we talked about the governance structure, but there's also our connection to spirit. That's why we just kind of
Yeah.
turn laissez-faire sometimes, because on some level we know that something
Yep.
outside of this
Yeah. Yeah.
human,
Yeah.
of this
Yep. Yep.
human
Yep.
mind
Yep.
fuck is going to
Yeah.
intervene at
Yep.
some point. Um,
Yep.
at some
Yep.
point, and even when I look back, right? Not that
Hmm.
I wish this, right? But even when
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
look back at the continent of Africa, that is the only land on this planet that has withstood three ice ages
Yep.
without everything being wiped out. Now, you can talk
Yep.
about how the Sahara used to be a rainforest, but the fact that
Hmm.
they can say that they have swapped terrain for terrain, when,
Hmm.
I mean, South America, as far
Yeah.
as people know, that's
Yeah.
always been rainforest. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like,
Yep.
the fact
Yep.
that this has been standing long enough for a rainforest to become a desert. Like, there's clearly
Yeah.
something there that's going to
Yeah.
ensure that
Yeah.
it is still
Yeah. Yeah.
standing.
Yeah. Yeah. My mother used to always say, and we learned to say this when things were happening that seemed like an injustice or whatever. My mother would say, "That's all right.
Mhm.
It's going to be all right. That's all right." And and what you just said reminded me of that. Yeah, even when we look at this world and what has happened, I'm thinking there's no that's why there's no amount of reparations.
Mhm.
When you think about it and you think about what has been done, there's no amount of reparations. So
Mhm.
I would say to them, woe unto you, because when the universe collects that debt,
Mhm.
oh my God. I mean, when we think
Right.
about everything that we've gone through and African people and people of color have gone through in this world for centuries. I mean, think about, when the universe collects on, like you say, that
Mhm.
spiritual debt, when the universe collects on that, shoot, I wouldn't want to be
Mhm.
a billionaire. I wouldn't want to be the 1%. I wouldn't want to be anywhere in any of that, either directly or by inheritance or by
Mhm.
any, because you will inherit all of that.
Yeah.
So, and again,
Yeah.
faith, we know, faith, we
We
know,
do know, and
you know,
again, that's why I said there's half of us that don't vote because we have the governance structure, but there's half of us that don't vote because we have a different understanding of things.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and even I'm thinking back to way back in the day when I was uh, a militant little baby bison. Um, we talked about the whole Bible verse of turning the other cheek, and
Uh-huh.
everyone was like, turn the other cheek. Like, I'm not turning the other cheek so someone can slap me again, slap me again, slap me again.
Right,
And
right.
this one guy, and I always loved the way that he thought. Of course, he was an air sign, aliens, but
Mhm.
I always liked the way that he thought, because he was like, well, what if God wants you to turn the other cheek because he doesn't want you to see what's about to happen? Like, turn the other cheek because you don't really want to see this.
I love it.
And that has always
uh,
stuck.
what
That
if
has
he literally
always
just wants us
stuck
to
with
turn and look
me.
away, right?
Exactly,
Right, because he
exactly.
doesn't want us
Like,
to see it,
what if
right?
what if turn the other cheek really just mean cover your eyes and close your
Yeah.
ears? Um, so that has always stuck with me. And mind you, I don't
uh,
know. I wasn't there when the Bible was
yeah,
written. I don't even know who
right,
wrote it,
right.
low key, or what the
At least
intentions
at
were.
least the version that we're given right now, right?
Mhm.
I've been seeing a lot of other things pop up, say, okay,
Yeah.
um Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
It's just interesting
yeah,
to think of
yeah.
all the interpretations of the Bible because, like, that's, I mean, language be languaging, and there's no one way to
It do,
interpret
it do, it do.
anything.
But
So I
here's
don't
my
know.
thing. Here's my thing, and when it comes to scripture, and again, why even though, like I say, I don't want to give the impression that I favor any one thing or not, because people always like want to jump on that. In fact, I've had people come in youth development training, and when what they was learning was too paradigm shifting,
Hmm.
and they couldn't, they had all this cognitive dissonance going on with them. They would default to this. Can I ask you a personal question? What's your religion? And they would ask that because they were looking for an excuse not to accept
Hmm.
what it
You better.
was.
I would be like money.
They were looking for an excuse to not accept what was questioning them, what was making
Hmm.
them, what was turning and twisting in them. So they were looking for an excuse to call it demon or something else. I'm thinking about the argument of, don't beat your kids, don't punish your kids. And they were looking for an excuse to continue to beat their kids. And what's your religion? What's your religion? Has nothing to do with it, you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I think I think this week, I think if we were going to journal, invitation to journal this week, it would be um, an apology. If we were to, what
Hmm.
do we need to apologize for? And I would start with myself, yourself. What do you need to forgive yourself for in order
Hmm.
to restore yourself or bring you to that place where you are genuine, comfortable with what you want, where you can just say, I don't care. I don't give, you know, a flying anything.
Hmm.
You know, what do you need to forgive yourself or apologize to yourself for to help put you in that place where you can, again be loving and caring and accepting, of who you are. I would start there before I start thinking about, who do I need to apologize for and everything, because I think for this journaling, we want to be loving and not shameful or feeling
Hmm.
guilt in that sense. And I think if we look at ourselves, I think it gives us an opportunity to kind of be loving to ourselves. What do we need to forgive ourselves for? And it's interesting. I was thinking a scripture from another area of faith, and that is in a prayer. When Muslims pray, one of the prayers they say, the first thing they say is, "Oh God, I have been unfair, or I have wronged myself. I have wronged myself." And I always wondered, what does that mean? I've wronged myself. I have been unjust to myself.
Hmm.
And we are unjust to ourselves. And in that process of forgiving, to be able to, forgive ourselves, for those things that we've knowingly or unknowingly done, which have put us in a place where we can't move forward, because we're blaming and shaming ourselves. And I really appreciate what you said about the slow killer that shame can be,
Hmm.
and the dark place it can take us without us even knowing, um, to the point where, we get to certain places where we can't function. We can't function. So
Yeah.
that's what I would think about. What do I need to forgive myself for?
That's oof. I'm gonna do that. I'm actually gonna do that
Yeah,
tomorrow
yeah,
morning, that journal prompt. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah, well, this has been really great. Not as heavy as
yeah,
last week. I will not as heavy
yeah,
as last
yeah,
week, but this has been a
yeah,
really great conversation as always. And thank you for
yeah.
joining us for another
Thank you,
episode
folks.
of the Generational Curse Words podcast. We'll see you next time.
Stay blessed.